I was recently asked a question by somebody who had been told by their employer that they were required to work overtime. Now, their question was, could they be forced to work overtime? Now, my answer to this would very much depend on what the employment contract says about overtime. If the employment contract says that you must work additional hours over and above your contractual hours, then if the employee refuses to do that, then it could result in disciplinary action for their failure to follow the terms of their employment contract. Now, of course, this would very much depend on a case-by-case basis on the reasons for the individual's refusal. So it may not necessarily be reasonable for the employer to go through a full disciplinary process and give warnings and potentially dismiss someone for refusing to do overtime if they have some legitimate reason for their refusal. So, for example, if they have a caring responsibility, a disability, or some other legitimate reason why they can't do that overtime. Now, if there is no contract clause that says you must work additional hours, then it is fair and reasonable for you to refuse to do those because you're not contractually obliged to work over and above your contracted hours. And so in those circumstances, it would be prudent to have a conversation with your employer to explain exactly why you're refusing to do the overtime that they want you to do, and try to reach some form of agreement or compromise with them on it, rather than get into a full-blown dispute. But ultimately, you can only be required and have consequences for failing to work compulsory overtime if your employer has a contractual obligation for you to do so. Of course, in any circumstance, you can't be forced to do anything, but there may be consequences for your employment if you refuse when you are legitimately required to work that overtime.